Good morning, students. Hi, Ram. Welcome back to the English grammar class. We all know that in the last video we have started with a new topic of English grammar, that is reported speech. Now we have completed certain rules and we have come to know about direct, indirect speech and the major difference between them in the last video. We have learned that how the words changes from direct to indirect. Even I have provided you the table also. Now in this video we are going to study further rules how we can change from direct to indirect. So let us begin with that today's class. So the first is rules for the change of tenses. Now in the last we have learned for the pronoun and certain rules regarding to your words, how the words are changes. Now in this video we are going to see how tenses get changed. So the rule 1 says that if the reporting verb is in present or future tense. Remember, if the reporting verb is in the present or future tense, the tense of the verb in the reported speech does not change. Now that reported speech and reported verb, if reported verb is in your present or future tense, then the verb in the reported speech will not change. And what the second point is, if the reporting verb is in the present or the future tense, the tense of the reported speech is not changed. Now let us see the example and you will be getting a clarification on this. Satish says, I am flying a kite. Satish says, I am flying a kite. That means it is in a present tense. Now, when we are going to change it into indirect speech, what it will be? Satish says that he is flying a kite. So, we noted here that it was in present tense. And when we change it into indirect speech, the tense remain the same. It doesn't change. So, remember, if a verb in your direct speech is in present or future, then it will not going to change in your indirect speech. The first rule says that. One more example, let us see all that also. Satish will say, I want a glass of milk. So here, I want a glass of milk. Will say means it is in future tense. Now if we are going to change it into indirect speech, the tense will be the same. Satish will say that he wants a glass of milk. That's it. That means it is very clear and very easy that if it in direct speech, the verb is in future or present tense, it will not going to change in your indirect speech. Now, let us see the second rule. The second rule says that if the reporting verb is in the past tense, the tense of the verb in the reported speech must be changed into the corresponding past tense. For example, I said I am speaking the truth. I said means that was in past tense. I am speaking the truth. Indirect says that I said that I was speaking the truth. So that means if the verb that is said in the direct speech is in past tense, then in indirect speech also it will change according to that only. Said, I am became I was. So remember this, the sentence, the direct speech is in past tense, then indirect will change according to that only. Now, but there are certain exceptions for rule second. What are the exceptions? Let us see that. If there is a universal truth or habitual fact in the reported speech, the tense of the verb is never changed. Now, if we are stating something which is true for everyone and which is true forever, that is universal, it will not going to change ever. That means if such line is said in a direct speech, then the tense will not change. So, for universal truth or habitual fact, for example, I wake at 5 p.m. That means I daily wake up at 5 p.m. It is a habitual. We are habitual of such things. I am having this habit that you can say I wake up at 5. That's it. that means you daily wake up at 5, and the tense of such sentences will not change. For example, here you can see that in the direct speech it is written that he said face is the index of mind. Face is the index of mind. Now if we are going to change it into indirect, the sentence will be he said that face is the index of mind. That means the tense doesn't change. Now the second exception is that the tense of the verb in the reported speech does not change if the reported speech states a past historical fact. That means if something is fact. For example, when we got independence on 15 August 1947. So if we are stating that thing in a past tense, that means that will not change its tenses in indirect speech also. For example, let us see. He said India became free on 15th August 1947. If we are going to now change it into indirect, the sentence will be he said that India became free on 15th August 1947. So now again the same thing is repeated, which was repeated in first rule also, that universal fact and habitual fact will not change their tense. And if we are stating something which happened in past, and that is true, that is a historical fact, then also we are not going to change the tense of that thing. So the third exception comes here. If two such actions are given in the reported speech, which take place at the same time, the past indefinite or continuous tense does not change. Now for example, he said Mohan was singing a song while Gopal was playing on a flute. Now here they are saying that if something has happened in past and that thing was happening simultaneously, that means two things are going at the same time or happening at the same time, then the past indefinite or continuous tense will not change. Now we have seen example that he said Mohan was singing a song while Gopal was playing on a flute. Now both are going same. That means when Mohan was singing, Gopal was playing on flute. Now this will not change the tense. Tense here will not be changed. It will remain continuous. He said that Mohan was singing a song while Gopal was playing a flute. Now you should remember it will also not change the tense. The past continuous will not change. Now there are three examples which is for you, so that you can easily have a clarification on such things. First is direct. You said he is a very good athlete. You said that he was a very good athlete. Now you can see that in the first sentence the reported verb is said. Says, it's not says, it is said. That means it's a past tense. Now the full sentence changes into past tense in the indirect speech, and it says that you said that he was. He is now changed into he was. First example. Now the second example says that I said I have finished my work. I have finished my work. Now have will be changed into had. This is the second example. Now third example here is he said her parents will pay a visit to Delhi. He said that her parents will change into would pay a visit to Delhi. Now I have given you a table in which I have mentioned that if will is in the present tense, what and how it will change into past tense. That table you have to refer for such transformations. Now there is a conversion of interrogative sentence from direct to indirect speech. Interrogative sentence, we all know interrogative sentence are the sentence which end with a question mark, that is a question. How you are going to change a question from direct to indirect? Let us see the rules first. The first rule says that the reporting verb said is changed into asked or inquired. So if there is a question, okay, and we have seen in the last few examples that we always use said. He said, I said, she said, they said is used. But now in interrogative sentence we are going to remove said And what we are going to apply? We are going to apply asked or inquired of. These are the two terms that you have to remember, that is asked and inquired of. Remember this, when we are changing an interrogative sentence, then we are not going to write said. We are not going to write said. We are going to write? We are going to write asked or inquired. For example, he said to me, will you go? This is a direct sentence. He said to me. Now if I am changing it into indirect, what it will become? He asked me, or he inquired me. He asked me whether or if I would go. Now here, that will not be applied. That is the connector. We have seen in the last example that we used to connect to the reporting verb and the reporting speech in the indirect sentence with the connector that. Now here, that will be removed, and whether and if, whether or if will come. In the coming rules, we are going to see that also. Let us see the next thing. Remove the comma and inverted comma in case of questions which are introduced by the finite verb or its auxiliary is, am, are, was, where, was, were, do, does, did, can, may, will, shall, has, have, had, etc., in which the answer is a no or yes. Introduce if or whether to join the principal clause with the subordinate one. So as I have told you, we are not going to use that. We are not going to use that. What we are going to use? We are going to use whether or if. So if there is a question in direct speech and we have to change that into indirect, first of all, we are not going to use said. First thing, we are not going to use said. Instead of using said, we are going to use asked or inquired of. That is the first thing. And the second thing is that the connector, which is connecting the two clause, the main clause and the subordinate one, will not be that. We are not going to use that there. What we are going to use is whether or if. These two things are very important to remember, that you are not going to use said in interrogative sentence. Use asked or inquired of. Second thing, don't use that while you are converting a interrogative sentence. You are going to use if or whether to join the sentences. Now, for example, he said to me, have you done your homework? Now, what you are going to do is that he asked me if I had done my homework or whether I have done my homework. So it's your choice. You want to use if or whether. One more example. Mr. John said, is Mr. Gupta at home? Now, because here we are not going to use asked, because John is not asking, he is inquiring. So what we are going to use instead of said, inquired of. Mr. John inquired if Mr. Gupta was at home. Now, another rule says that in case of interrogative sentence which begin with the interrogative pronoun, interrogative means interrogative are the words like which, what, why, when, where. If they are starting with such pronoun, the first word of the sentence is made the connectivity. For example, let us see the example, then I am going to explain. He said to me, why are you late today? He asked me why I was late that day. Here, if a sentence is starting with the pronoun, interrogative pronoun like which, what, why, when, where, how. If it is starting with such words in the direct sentence, in the direct speech, if it is starting with why. Now here, why, what, which, when, where, how will become the connector. We are not going to use whether or if. We are not going to use them. What we are going to use? We are going to use interrogative pronoun as the connectivity, as the connectors. As we have seen in the example also, he said to me why. Now here, when we are going to change it into indirect speech, why will become the connector. For example, he asked me why I was late that day. Now here we have not used if or whether. Now there is a note, the mark of interrogation is never retained in the indirect form and the subject is brought before the verb as in assertive sentence. Now as you can see here, that question mark, we have removed this. The question mark is removed. Now comes the next thing, that is about exclamatory sentences. We have learned the assertive sentences first, that is a simple sentence. Then we have learned about interrogative sentence, and now the last thing is about exclamatory sentences. We know that exclamation marks are used to show a huge amount of emotions. Hooray, alas, oh, heaven, bravo. Such are the exclamatory words, and you all know what is exclamatory mark. Exclamatory marks is this is exclamatory mark. So such exclamatory words are removed. Sometimes exclamatory sentences contain exclamations. Okay, first thing. And these are removed in the direct speech, and we use, now if exclamation is given in indirect speech, try to understand, if exclamation words are used in direct speech, then they are going to remove it in indirect speech. And instead of using those words, what we are going to use, let us see. We are going to use exclamation with joy, exclamation with surprise, exclamation of joy, surprise, sadness. We are going to use such thing. Instead of using said, we are not going to use reported verb as said. What we are going to use, exclamation with joy, exclamation with surprise, exclamation with happiness. We are going to use such words if after looking at the word used here. Now here you can see the example. Rohan said, hooray, we won the match. Now what we are going to do in indirect speech, we are going to remove said. We are not going to write said in the indirect speech. What we are going to use, Rohan exclaimed with joy that they had won the match. Now this is what we are going to use. We are going to use exclaim with joy instead of writing hooray and said. I hope you have understood this also. So this was your reported speech. I hope you have understood it well. So that was all for today's class. Take care, students. Thank you.